Hello, and welcome to How to Paint Skaven version 1, or the red version. Here's your paint list. First we base coat using dark flesh and beastie brown. Our first highlight is using just beastie brown, and you want to paint this everywhere except for the deep details and stuff, or areas that are pointing straight down. Now we use a mixture of beastie brown and bronze flesh tone, and this is where we're trying to think about where the light's going to be hitting on the model in a broad sense. So a lot of the areas that are pointing straight up and slightly at an angle, you can use this color on there. Now we just use bronze flesh tone, and you want to work on those areas that you just highlighted, but don't completely cover up that last color, and more towards the light. Push that paint towards it. Now we use elf skin tone, and we want to work on the fleshy bits. So the ears, I chose the upper lip, kind of where their whiskers would be, and then we'll also pull this color down into their feet and about the wrist area of their hands and push it towards the fingers, kind of to just say there's no hair there. Now we base coat all the metallic areas with black. I chose dwarf skin, just kind of a little red tinge to it to paint on the tail. Now we're going to dry brush gun onto these metallic areas, being careful not to get it onto like the skin that we already did. But if you do, it's not a big deal. The gun color from Model Air is actually very wet, so it doesn't really look like a dry brush at all. It just kind of looks like I'm over brushing, which is like dry brushing, but using a little bit more paint in your brush. It'll work either way. Then we add silver to the gun to make a highlight color, and use the dry brush to hit the edges and get your basic highlights. So a little bit lighter hand on this step. Now I use elf skin tone, and we're going to dry brush this onto the little bits of hairs that he has on his jawline, the top of his head, and his forearms. Alright, time to base the wood bits on the shield, and for that we'll use charred brown. For the first highlight on the shield, we're just going to use leather brown and dry brush that against the grain, so it'll pick up just the highlights on top. And I concentrate the dry brush pretty much everywhere. And a new trick, for me anyway, is to leave the previous color on the dry brush, dip it in a little bit of white, wipe it off like you're going to dry brush normally, and it'll blend. Alright, now to do the cloth in red, we're going to use my favorite color, which is the Model Air Scarlet Red. It's so vibrant. I love it. To highlight that, we are going to use model color Vermilion, and this is a little bit more on the orange side, but it doesn't give that orange feel. Next highlight, we mix in some elf skin tone and concentrate just on the edge of the folds and near the bottom. I thought the highlight was a little too bright, so I took some of the Scarlet Red, thinned it down about 5 parts water, and went over all the red area again, just to bring the highlight down and bring the base color back up. Now I wanted to get these fleshy areas a little pink, so I made a mix of violet, which is just grabbing a purple and adding a little bit more red, so not a 1-to-1, probably 2-to-1. And if you didn't thin enough, it's really easy to just dip your brush in water, kind of get most of the paint out, and then wipe off any of the excess. That's what you see me do here. Now we base coat the bandages that are around his ankles using beige. Now we'll put some skin wash on those bandages. This will give them kind of an orangey look. It's hard because the model's brown, and a lot of these areas that I want to use brown on, I'm trying to make them stand out from each other. Alright, now we want to bring out the little rings on the tail here, so we'll take some beige and dry brush that lightly onto the highlight areas. If you look at the way the light hits the tail, you'll know exactly where to highlight. Or you can hold the model like that and look down and see where the the light would hit it. Okay, now it's time to blackline the model. And for this, I use a pre-mixed solution. It's like 80% slow dry, 10% water, and 10% fluid. And this makes the paint not dry for a while. So if you make a mistake, you have plenty of time to take another brush and wipe it off. But the purpose of blacklining is to separate the textures. So in between, you know, where the skin ends and the armor starts, where cloth starts, and it separates everything out, kind of like a comic book. And for me, it's a style thing, and I like it. Alright, now we'll grab some more of that beige that's on the palette and paint his toenails and his teeth. So I painted the base brown, and just like I said before, it's hard to make things stand out. And I decided, hey, you know, he's mostly red, reddish tone browns, and let's use a green. And whenever I have to go to green, I really like turquoise. So I figured, hey, this will look pretty good. So we based with jade green. And then now we're going to take foul green and dry brush that as close as you can get it to his feet without getting on him. I mean, you don't have to get right up to the edge. And since we had beige on the palette, I did exactly what we did before, which was you leave that previous color of foul green on, dip the tip of the brush in the beige just to get some of that lighter color, wipe it off on a towel like you're gonna normally do for dry brushing, and hit the edges. And every time you dip into the beige, it's gonna get a little bit lighter. And for the wash, we mix jade green and royal purple, and I just use the same dry brush to apply it. It's pretty nice, and if you get too much on there, just wipe the wash off and soak some of it back up. And here we're using the wakizashi to make really thin lines across the blade, kind of to show that the blades hit stuff. Maybe he's been into fights with other people. And here we're going to take straight silver and edge highlight all our metal parts. So the edge of the blade, edges of the armor, the shield, and picking out pieces of chainmail that might look a little dull. And for the fleshy areas, if you want to pick those out and make them a little bit more pink, we'll take elf skin tone and squid pink, mix those together and highlight certain areas. So the top of the nose, inside the ears, and clean up the little rings on the tail, make them look a little bit nicer. Alright, and this is the result. This is the first Skaven tutorial. I'm not sure when the next one will come out, but I plan on doing all the main colors for them. He's done pretty clean, and we'll change that on the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.